Good morning, North Augusta Church. We'll go ahead and dismiss children to their classes. If you would like to make a financial contribution to North Augusta Church, there are a few ways you can do that. The most straightforward is there's a bowl in the back you can drop something in. There also is a P.O. box you can mail a check if you prefer to do that. Brad and his family are huge proponents of bill pay if you want to look into that with your bank. And also, if you just want to pull up the sermon notes today, we've got a link at the bottom for our online giving, or you could just go to give.northAugustaChurch.org, and there's a way you can use a debit card or even set up automatic giving if you wanted to do that. I did just see in the bulletin, and if you didn't get a bulletin, get one of those, that November 1st, which I believe is Tuesday, is Barry Thompson's birthday. Now, what does Barry Thompson want for his birthday, you might ask? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I happen to know. The Thompsons are having an a cappella singing at Rocky Creek tonight at 5 o'clock, and Barry, for his birthday, would love for you to attend. So, if you love Barry, go. If not, it's really up to you. My family is at home today. Chloe spiked a fever last night, so it is not COVID. We did test for that. But there's a lot of other things going around that are not fun, too, and we don't know which of those it is. So keep her in your prayers. We're hoping she gets better fast. She's hoping she gets better by tomorrow. If you are not aware, tomorrow is Halloween. Because it's October, for the first part of the month, I was doing a series on fear. I'm not really doing something in that series today, but it's still kind of the theme because it's the day before Halloween. Halloween is interesting to me because lots of people have lots of feelings about it. Parts of it are rooted in an ancient Celtic festival called Samhain that's kind of weird. But also the name actually itself, Halloween, is sort of a abbreviated version of saying All Hallows Eve because it's the day before on sort of liturgical church calendars, a day called All Saints' Day. And so there are lots of different ways to do it. But barring all of that, for me, and you follow your own convictions on this, but for me, several years ago, it dawned on me that if my calling is to be a presence in the places where I'm planted, to reflect who God is to the people around me, not to put too fine a point on it, to be, among other things, a good neighbor. In a world and a society where we're constantly asking, how do people meet their neighbors? Who even knows who their neighbors are? We drive into our little garages, shut our little doors, go into our privacy fence backyards. And several years ago, it dawned on me, well, we've at least got this one day where literally everybody in the neighborhood comes to my house, and I go to theirs, and it's cool. No, everybody's okay with it. And so it occurred to me that there's an opportunity to be a presence and to know our neighbors and to be good and to make an impression. And yes, just a few seconds. But I'm not sure I'm doing Jesus any favors by saying, hey, in the name of Jesus, I'm the dark house who doesn't give your children candy. So I feel like it's an opportunity to be a presence in the neighborhood, and that's what we try to do with it. And so that's also why I talk to theme during that month. Now, when I was trying to figure out what to do for this week, I remembered a story from the Bible, and then I remembered what I thought of as another story in the Bible because they're normally talked about separately. But then when I looked at them, they're definitely right there together. There's no real division. It's meant to be sort of read as one story, and if you read it, it really makes sense that it lays out that way. It sets it up really, really well in the way that it flows. So I called the sermon today, it was a dark and stormy night, and I think you'll see why as we get started. If you have a Bible, or if you want to look in the YouVersion Bible app at those sermon notes, it'll be right there. Turn to Luke chapter 8, starting in verse 22. Luke chapter 8, starting in verse 22. One day Jesus said to his disciples, "Let's go over to the other side of the lake." So they got in a boat and set out. As they sailed, he fell asleep. A squall came down on the lake so that the boat was being swamped, and they were in great danger. The disciples went and woke him, saying, "Master, Master, we're going to drown." He got up, rebuked the wind and the raging waters. The storm subsided, and all was calm. "Where is your faith?" he asked the disciples. In fear and amazement, they asked one another, "Who is this? He commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him." So Jesus comes to his disciples, fishermen, used to boats. And he says, "Let's go to the other side of the lake." And so they, being fishermen who are used to boats, know that the quickest way to the other side of the lake is not around it, but down the middle. So they get in a boat, and they head out. And while they're going, Jesus falls asleep. Now, I don't know how many of you have spent much time on boats. I don't know how many of you, partially because I'm curious, how many of you have ever been on like a cruise on the ocean or something like that? How many of you have ever been through weather on a cruise in the ocean? All right. I don't get motion sick, except for I can't exactly say that anymore after going through weather on a cruise ship in the ocean. Okay? It's very disorienting. It's very problematic. And those cruise ships have like stabilizers built into them. Like, so it's not just like a regular boat. They actually do things to stabilize them, so it's not as bad as it would be. Now, they're on a boat that, let's say, doesn't have that technology. They start out on the boat. Now, you probably know as well as I do that if you're on a boat and you're on it overnight and there's some sort of a bed or something, you usually sleep pretty good. I mean, the whole thing kind of rocks you to sleep. So Jesus lays down, he takes a nap, he goes to sleep. And while he's asleep, this storm sweeps in. And they freak out because, well, of course they do. It's pretty scary. It's pretty terrifying. But Jesus, still asleep. So they go and wake Jesus up, and they say, and I quote, "Master, Master, we are going to drown." Now, no, what they don't say. They don't say, "Hey, Jesus, we got a little problem here. We can't really figure it out. Could you help us?" They don't say, "Hey, Jesus, hate to interrupt your nap, but we just don't know exactly what to do, so if you could give us some steps to follow in the storm, that would help us." No, what they say to Jesus is, "Master, Master, we're going to drown." It's a declarative statement. They have assigned their fate. You could argue that there's an implied unless you do something. I think that's probably a good argument. But their statement is, here's what's going on, we're going to drown. So Jesus gets up. I presume he walks out on the deck. And he commands the wind and the storm to stop. And they do. Do you get that? Now, storms don't usually just stop, but that's how this reads. He commands them to stop, and they do. And then it says, he turns over to the disciples and says, "Come on, guys, where's your faith?" And then Luke records it as, "In fear and amazement, they said to one another, 'Who is this? He commands even the wind and the water, and they obey him.'" Now, if it just said, "in amazement," they said, that would have been fine. That would have communicated something. You would say, of course they were amazed. These are the guys who have been walking around with Jesus. They know him really well. But there's something in that kind of a display of power that inspires some level of fear, too. They're amazed, but they're a little scared because whatever they estimated sort of his power levels to be at, or however you want to put that, it's clearly higher. He's clearly able to do more than they anticipated because, again, what they woke Jesus up and said wasn't, "Hey, Jesus, there's a big storm. If you could get up and tell it to stop, we would really appreciate it." They said, "We're going to drown." And instead, he goes out and stops it and asks them where their faith is. So Jesus has displayed this power. It started out, they go into this uncontrollable, chaotic kind of situation. They at least, even if they didn't know what to ask, even if they didn't know what they were asking for, even if they're sort of gloom and doom in the way that they come to him, they at least know to go to Jesus. And in the middle of that chaotic, uncontrollable, dangerous situation, Jesus is able to calm the storm. Jesus makes them safe. Jesus, and apparently in what he tells them, the key to it was faith. All of the things that were beyond their control are under his. Now, this is normally Now, most preachers would keep talking about it, but this is normally one sermon. They look at this passage, they say, because it's great. Beginning, middle, end, it's right there, it's compact, and then you unpack it and make a bunch of points, and that's fine. But it dawns on me, if you're reading through the text, except for where your Bible translators and editors may have inserted like a topic sentence there, like a heading, it just flows into the next thing. The next story starts with him getting off of this boat. So keep reading. And pick up in verse 26. They sailed to the region of the Gerasenes, which is across the lake from Galilee. When Jesus stepped ashore, he was met by a demon-possessed man from the town. For a long time, the man had not worn clothes or lived in a house, but had lived in the tombs. Now, as far as terrifying setups go, that's not bad. Now, I have a way that I picture this scene that may or may not be what happened. It's possible that naked, demon-possessed guy may have made a trip from the cemetery to the port, wherever it was. It kind of seems like they might have pulled up to a port that was at least close to a cemetery. But whatever the deal, they get out of the boat to a guy waiting on them who is notable because, A, demon-possessed, a little disconcerting. It's subtle, but you should know he's not wearing clothes and hasn't for a long time. So naked, demon-possessed, and waiting for you. And there's this line in here that grabbed me this week. I didn't even expect that this is part of where the sermon would go. But it talks about that he had lived in the tombs. Now, if you'll allow me a little latitude here. If you ask me what a demon is, I will tell you, well, a lot of people have a lot of thoughts on that. A lot of really educated people have a lot of thoughts on that. There are people who argue that there's some kind of fallen angels or beings that serve Satan like angels serve God. There's an ancient Jewish tradition that talks about them as the spirits of the wicked dead. There's lots of other opinions. If you ask me which one it really is, I'll go, I don't know. It's never really clearly defined. They just kind of reference a word. Whatever's going on is disconcerting. Whatever's going on, it's some kind of evil coming into play and influencing. And whatever's going on, I think it would be fair to say that this man is haunted. Whatever life he was meant to have, he's not having. He's from the town, but he doesn't even really live there anymore. He can't even really fit into society. He's controlled by these demons. And so he lives in the tombs. And that got me thinking about how many of us are haunted. We're haunted by things that happened in the past, either things that we've done or things that happened to us. We're haunted by breaks in relationships, where for reasons that may be very good reasons, that we've chosen to feed the hurt, and we've allowed it to change and take root and change into bitterness. It controls where we go. It controls how we react. It controls how we interpret the world. It occurred to me that there's a ton of us, because of the way that we're haunted, instead of living the vibrant and active lives that we're called to live, and instead of living the lives that are engaged with the world and with life and with the people that are around us, we live in the tombs. The things that we were supposed to have, the things that we were supposed to do, the things that we were supposed to be are circumvented because we're haunted and we live in the tombs. It's funny, even, I've worked with churches for, I'm not even going to try to do the math in front of you right now. I did youth ministry for about 10 years. It's been well over a decade that we've been in here. So less than 30 years, but more than 20 I've done ministry. And then my dad was a minister all my life before that. And I actually know that this isn't just true of individuals. Sometimes this is true of whole groups of people. This is true of churches. That you'll hear what they talk about, that you'll hear the things that they're scared of and what they're afraid people are going to react to, and so they have to be careful. And then you finally ask, who are you talking about? And they can't name anybody that's there and that are part of it anymore. It's just sort of ghosts of things that happened in the past. They just got so in the pattern of working with it that way that we make decisions based on things that aren't there anymore. We're just haunted by them. Happens with individuals, happens with churches, happens with families, happens all kind of other organizations. You can probably see the applications yourself. So often we're haunted and we live in the tombs. And that's not where we're meant to live, as evidenced by, the word tombs. Have you seen, look, we cut off cable a long time ago, so we stream all our stuff. I'm not taking a high ground there saying, oh, the rest of you watch TV, and I don't. I watch so much TV because we have so many streaming things. They keep offering me promotions, and I'm like, sure, and then I'm like, oh, so much. But because of that, because we're on streaming, we watch 7 commercials repeatedly. They don't show all the commercials. They just show a few commercials, and they show them 1,000 times. The one that I'm actually liking, that I'm not annoyed by right now, is there's a Geico commercial that's in horror movies, people make poor decisions. Have you seen that one? And they're running, the teenagers are running, and there's a spooky house, and fall down, and then they're like, hey, let's go over there. And one of them goes, why don't we get in the running car? And they're like, are you crazy? And let's go hide behind the chainsaws. And there's all these chainsaws hanging down by chains. And they get behind them, and they're hiding. And the serial killer's behind them with a mask on, and he sees what they're doing, and he just puts his mask up, and he's like, he just rolls his eyes. And then when you're in horror movies, you make poor decisions. And then they take off running at the end of the commercial, and you hear in the background one of them going, let's go to the cemetery. In some ways, that's what this scene feels like, except for that it's Jesus and he can handle it. But it almost has to be what it seemed like to the disciples. They get out of the boat, they land wherever they land, where naked demon-possessed guy can show up there. He's waiting for them. And it has to seem like, well, we've been following him. He seems to know. He just did that storm and wind thing. And maybe that's part of the setup. Maybe they needed to have an experience to be able to follow him into something like this. Maybe there's a sense in which this is another chaotic situation that seems like it's beyond their control. But if Jesus could handle that one, then Jesus can probably handle this one, and they needed a recent reference. So pick up in verse 28. When he saw Jesus, he being naked demon-possessed guy, when he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell at his feet, shouting at the top of his voice, what do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, don't torture me. Which is an odd opening. For Jesus had commanded the impure spirit to come out of the man. Many times it had seized him, and though he was chained hand and foot and kept under guard, he had broken his chains and been driven by the demon into solitary places. Jesus asked him, what is your name? Legion, he replied, because many demons had gone into him. And they begged Jesus repeatedly not to order them to go into the abyss. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the hillside. The demons begged Jesus to let them go into the pigs, and he gave them permission. When the demons came out of the man, they went into the pigs, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and was drowned. Okay, several things going on in this part. Thing number one, the demons are crystal clear on who Jesus is. Do you see that? You remember in the Sermon on the Mount, there's this one part where, it may not be the Sermon on the Mount, but Jesus is talking, and he says, you guys believe in God? Great. You do realize that the demons believe in God and tremble, right? Like just believing in God, not that much of an accomplishment. Demons are more clear on it than you are. It's what they do with it that makes a difference. So the demons are crystal clear, on site. They know who Jesus is. Jesus had apparently commanded the demons to come out of him. And so they say, "Have mercy on us, Jesus, Son of the Most High God, and don't torture us." Whatever they know about Jesus, and you still got their interpretation of where that might go, but they know it's a fight they can't win. You see that, right? They know a strategy. They're not trying something. The only thing they're trying to do is kind of save themselves. They don't think they can overpower it. They don't think they can stay in the guy. They're just trying to pick a better bad outcome. They're trying to come up with the best bad option for them. Also, I want you to know something that's buried here. One of the main things that the demons did, it says even when people had captured him and chained him up, one of the main things that the demons did was that they would drive the man into solitary places. You see that? I've read that story 100 times and never caught that. Where's he been living? He's been living in the tombs. Pretty solitary. Why would the demons drive him to solitary places? Have you ever known someone, and the more penetrating question is, have you ever been someone who, when they get overwhelmed or they get hurt or they get involved in something that's their conscience isn't okay with, that they know it's not okay for them to do, but the deeper they get into it, the more that they pull away from other people, or the more that you pull away from other people? You ever felt kind of depression coming on, and your instinct is to pull back and to pull back and to pull back, even though, look, I am a proponent that sometimes you need some solitary time away. Sometimes you need some time to pray and to be alone. Those times are in a pattern that Jesus observes. That's not what I'm talking about. When I was in youth ministry, we knew the kids that were getting in trouble. Not because we heard rumors, not because we even observed anything directly, but they stop making eye contact with you. They start talking less. Then you start seeing them less. And they pull back and they pull back and they pull back. And the thing that I've learned since then is very similar things happen with adults. Sometimes even with adults, they wind up kind of ghosting you, not because of anything that you did, but because of what they're involving themselves in. And they know on some level. Now, let me be clear. Some of it is shame. Some of it is shame, some of it is guilt, some of it is not feeling like you can face somebody else. But on some level, we're resistant to what might get us out of it. And most often, what will get us out of it is other people. Most often, what will help get us out of it is other people. And one of the biggest lies that you've ever been sold that you love to believe is, I can handle it. Let me be clear. No, you can't. You're not wired for it. You were called to be a part of a community of people who are very different from each other, who love and respect each other, and who help each other carry burdens. You are called to have people that you love and respect around you who you can speak those unspeakable things to, and who won't judge you, who won't tear you down, but who will walk with you and lift you up and breathe life and hope into you. And you're called to do that for them too. It's a different way of being in the world, but it's the one that you were made for, the one that you were wired for. Are there times that you should pull away and spend some time in solitude and prayer? Yeah, there are. Are there times when you shouldn't pull away? Well, often in those times, you're not pulling away for that kind of solitude and certainly not prayer. You're just kind of cocooning and going down farther in the pit. And in those times, you need to push against it and pull some other people in and speak the thing that you think is unspeakable, because that's what takes its power from it. Shame derives its power from being unspeakable. And the moment that it's spoken with people who are trustworthy, with people who are respectable, with people who are the kind of people they're supposed to be in your life, its power dissipates. And you can heal. The Apostle Paul talks about that when you confess with your mouth, you will be healed. And that's not that you have to make an appointment with a special person to do that. It's not even talking about forgiveness. Like, God forgives you. But do you want to be healed from that thing, or do you want to keep stuck and get sucked down in it? Because the healing comes when you speak it to other people and you learn to walk together. When you speak it to other people and you have some kind of accountability. When you speak it to other people and you realize that you're still worthy of love and connection. Because we're all a little broken. We're all carrying something, and we do nobody any favors by pretending that we're not. We're all in process. We're all being molded into the image of Jesus. We're all in the process of being healed, and we do it together. And because we're all chipped or broken in a little bit of a different way, we have different strengths, and so we're able to bear those burdens together. So look, you can choose to keep being haunted. You can choose to keep living in the tombs. Or you can choose a different path, the one that you are meant for. Now, we'll get back to that in a minute. More things going on here. Jesus asked, "What is your name?" Now, in the parallel passage in Mark, he says it like this: "Legion, for we are many." Now, that is one of the, if you're paying attention to that story, that's one of the creepiest, scariest lines I've ever heard in my life. Like, if that plays in a movie or something, that is the thing that it's not a jump scare. I'm a little bit embarrassed to tell you this, but I'm going to tell you because I'm tired and maybe my judgment's not great. I remember years and years ago, I was home for Thanksgiving or Christmas or something. It's probably Thanksgiving because everybody else in the room fell asleep when this happened. So we're sitting in the living room, and for some reason, this was at my parents' house. I still can't figure out why we did this. For some reason, we turned on the movie The Mothman Prophecies with Richard Gere. You know how I normally say this is not an official endorsement by North Augusta Church? This isn't an official endorsement by me. It's not even that great. It says that it's based on true events. The true events appear to be that one time in West Virginia, somebody said the word Mothman, and so they wrote a story about it. But there's just one scene in the middle of it. It's not even that good a movie. But everybody else in the room is asleep. I'm kind of there in a half tryptophan turkey daze, but I'm still watching the movie because I can't turn stories off in my head. And whatever the thing is that's never made clear, except for it kind of looks like a moth and a man, it calls Richard Gere. I know, see how ridiculous a plot point that is? It's ridiculous. But he gets freaked out. He knows what it is that's contacted him, and he says, "What's your name?" Which is a weird thing to ask, but it gives him one and hangs up. Nothing else ever comes up. It was the creepiest thing everybody else was asleep, and I'm sitting there creeped out by myself, knowing it's dumb because the whole movie was kind of dumb. But this one moment kind of creeped me out because it gave a name. Well, this is kind of creepy too because it asked the guy his name. It doesn't give the man's actual name. The demons say, "We are legion, for we are many." Now, the immediate reference for that, I don't know how literal the demons were being, but the immediate reference for that in their head would be a Roman legion. The Roman legion, and it breaks down into different roles and stuff, but a Roman legion at that time was between 4,000 and 6,000 men. Now, I don't know if the demons had master's degrees in English and were trying to use hyperbole, or if they were saying, "Well, you guys know what a legion is, it's that many." But the point is, it's a whole lot. more than you would assume was in one guy. Legion, for we are many. Then, after making this sort of very intimidating to most people statement, would be one of the scariest lines in a horror movie that you ever saw, they again start begging for mercy. And because they're afraid of being thrown into something called the abyss, what's the abyss? I could guess, but it doesn't say. But demons are pretty scared of it. They beg for an alternative. They offer Jesus an alternative and ask if it's cool. Hey, there's some pigs over there. Could you just throw us into the pigs? And then, and this line, again, I never quite caught this. Like, in my head, for whatever reason, and maybe I just heard it as a kid and translated it this way, but I had in my head that Jesus, instead of casting them out of the man, would cast them into the pigs. But that's not the way that it reads. It says Jesus gave them permission, and they went. Okay, man, if you guys want to go into pigs, go for it. And so the demons all leave the guy and go into this herd of pigs, which I'm saying that in a normal kind of voice, but that's pretty weird. I mean, a bunch of demons in one guy, also pretty weird. But they go into these pigs. They don't appear to be wild pigs, by the way. They appear to be some dude's herd of pigs. When they go into the pigs immediately run down an embankment into the water and all drown. Which, if you were there, would be a little disconcerting. If you were the guys paid to watch the pigs, would be a lot disconcerting. Because even an accurate story of what happened probably is not going to satisfy your boss. And you're not going to believe it. You're right, I don't. You're fired. Jesus had the authority to give them permission to go into the pigs. And that's what he does. Now let's finish up here. Luke chapter 8, starting in verse 34. When those tending the pigs saw what had happened, they ran off and reported this in town and the countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. Guys, you're never going to believe it. All our pigs ran into the water and drowned. Man, we got to go see this. So they go and see, so they can see floating pigs in the water. Because, again, they didn't have TV or Netflix. This is big news. So, when they came to Jesus, they found the man whom the demons had gone out sitting at Jesus' feet, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people how the demon-possessed man had been cured. Then all the people of the region of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them because they were overcome with fear, so he got in the boat and left. The man from whom the demons had gone out begged to go with him, but Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return home and tell how much God has done for you." So the man went away and told all over town how much Jesus had done for him. So, pig workers see all their pigs run into the water and drown. They go into the town and the countryside telling everyone what had happened. Partially because they're freaked out. Partially because, what else are they going to do? They don't have pigs to watch anymore. The people say, "That sounds weird," and they go to check it out. When they get there, not only do they see a bunch of dead pigs floating in the water, they see the guy who they know as demon-possessed guy who lives in the tombs, who doesn't really wear clothes, and when we catch him and chain him up, he escapes and goes back to the tombs because he really likes it there. Terrifying guy who's possessed with enough demons that they refer to themselves as a legion. Only now, he's dressed, which gets their attention, cleaned up and in his right mind. Now, here's the part that you might miss because it's not what you would necessarily anticipate. And their reaction to that is what? They see terrifying, naked, demon-possessed guy, not any of those things anymore, and now dressed in his right mind guy sitting at the feet of Jesus. And their response is, wow, Jesus, you must have something to say. Tell us all your wisdom. No, that's not what it says. Hey, Jesus, we've got some other problems. Could you help us with those? That's not what it says. It says, when they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone out, sitting at Jesus' feet, dressed in his right mind, and they were afraid. Their response to that was fear. Is it clearly better for the guy? Yeah, dressed in his right mind is unarguably better than running around naked, out of your mind, living in tombs. Clear distinction. Something has happened. It was something beyond what any of them could pull off. But their response is fear. And not just a moment of fear, mind you, because it keeps going. Those who had seen it told the people how the demon-possessed man was cured. So they could just see it to start with and make up their own stories. You know how we do that? When you speculate, and the story you speculate is usually horrible and way worse than it is. Well, very quickly they can't do that anymore because the people who were there and see it said, oh man, you wouldn't believe it. Here's how it happened. Jesus gets out of the boat. The guy yells at him and is like, Jesus, Son of the Most High God, please don't torture us. Then asks for permission to go in these pigs, and he gives the permission, and the pigs run into the water. It seems like it was him. So they clarify what had happened. They give him a narrative that's just as clear as the one that I read to you. And then their response is this. Then all the people of the region of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them because they were overcome with fear. And what does Jesus do? He gets in the boat and leaves. Because Jesus doesn't go where he's not wanted. Because Jesus operates by invitation, not coercion. Now, why were they scared? Why were they scared to the point that all the people in the region of the Gerasenes, which I'm pretty sure is hyperbole, but it was a lot of people, asked him to leave? What harm has he done them? None. There's not even some kind of carnival act that's trying to make money off of this guy. What he's done is unarguably good. But that display of power can be disconcerting for some people. Especially in the moment when it just happened, when this radical shift has happened, and things were one way, and it might not be ideal, but at least we understood how it worked. And now it's completely different, and we're having trouble wrapping our head around it. See, a lot of times, even when something unimaginably good takes place, something that would seem to point beyond something that we can even just access with our five senses, even if the result is unarguably good, the radical shift is so radical that people distance themselves from it because they don't know what to do with it. I mean, we think, I grew up hearing, well, why did Jesus do miracles? Well, Jesus did the miracles so that people would believe in his message. My problem is, I find that not to be the way things typically work. People can be really, really impressed by something they don't understand. But there aren't troves of people following around David Copperfield and David Blaine asking them to explain the mysteries of life to you. I mean, they're pretty good card tricks. I mean, they're amazing, actually. We know they're tricks, that's part of it, but still, something beyond your scope, beyond your understanding can freak you out. You don't necessarily think that they need everything else. And a lot of times, it just makes you kind of distance yourself or think that it's something otherworldly that doesn't have anything to do with you. You know it's something that you couldn't do. You're a little scared by somebody that can do things that you can't do, and so you wind up distancing yourself. You wind up being a little scared of it because you don't know how they did it. I actually saw this special with David Blaine one time, who does the street magic that's right in your face kind of stuff. And he had gotten big enough that they started doing some things with celebrities, so they took him into Harrison Ford's house. And so he's talking to Harrison Ford, and he has Harrison Ford pick a card. You know, it sounds like just the land. You've seen Harrison Ford. He's just kind of humoring him at this point. And then, he makes the card disappear or something. And then he points over to the kitchen, and he says, "Hey, can you go pick a piece of fruit up out of that bowl? There's this bowl that's been sitting there the whole time in this kitchen." So Harrison Ford picks up this orange, just the thing that happens to be on the top. You can look up this clip on YouTube. I promise I'm not making it up. And he goes, "Peel the orange." And Harrison, "All right." And so Harrison, in his curmudgeonly way, starts peeling the orange. And in the middle of the orange, inside the peel, is the folded up card that he had picked. And Harrison Ford just looks up at him and goes, "Get out of my house." "No, I'm serious. Get out now." It's one of the truest reactions I've ever seen. A lot of times that's the reaction. "I don't know how you did that. We put that fruit out this morning. Get out of my house." And that's just a guy who does tricks, right? And this guy is not a plant. He's not the guy that came in like a week early to warm up the crowd and then, oh, look at how his life's changed. This guy's been there his whole life. Crazy naked guy that lives in the tombs. We used to live in our old neighborhood in Walnut Grove. There was this guy who just like clockwork jogged all the time. Like when we went to take the kids to school in the morning, he was out there jogging. Well, I don't know how he did anything else. Like anytime we went anywhere, this guy was jogging. We started calling him Random Running Dude. It's one of the things we miss about our old neighborhood, but it just became a part of what it meant to live there. There are houses over there. There's a gate over here that's made out of bricks. At Halloween, they put signs up that say, "Don't park on this side of the street." Oh, and there's Random Running Guy. It's just something that's a part of living there. Well, naked, demon-possessed guy that lived in tombs was their Random Running Guy. He was the guy in the background that was just kind of always there. It wasn't a setup. They knew him. Jesus comes in and radically changes the situation. He's not a shill. It's not a setup. This is a guy that they've known. It's either the longest con game ever, or Jesus comes into a guy that they know, a situation they know is real, and radically changes it like that. And they all become Harrison Ford at that point and tell him to get out of their house. Now, there's one exception. The guy who had been freed from the demons. The guy dressed in his right mind and at the feet of Jesus now. And he looks up at Jesus in gratitude. And partially he's probably looking back at the town who all know him as the random, naked, demon-possessed running guy. And who that's all they've ever known him as, at least in recent memory. Even though he's different now, he still carries that baggage. And so he thinks about getting free from that. He also is looking at Jesus in gratitude, and he asks Jesus if he can go with him. He asks Jesus if he can join his mission because he's so grateful for the change that's come into his life. "Jesus, can I go with you? Can I help you with what you're doing? I want to be a part of your mission." And Jesus tells him that the mission actually requires that this man go back home and tell his story. The story of how much God has done for him. He goes, "Look, if you're really grateful, if you really want to be a part of what I'm doing, I don't need you following me around, like geographically. What you could do for me, what you could do to aid what I'm doing in the world is simply this. Go back home." No, not the cemetery, the one that you lived in before that. "And tell people what's happened. Tell people all the things that God has done for you." Because while it is disconcerting when people see this big change and they're like, "Jesus, get out of my house. Whatever's going on here is too big. I'm freaked out by it. Get out of my house." The guy that's there day after day is a daily reminder of who he used to be and who he is now. The guy who will tell you, "Look, I was out of control. All of these things were wrong. I kept pulling away from everybody. I was living in the tombs. I was haunted. I had no control over it." And then something happened. And then God freed me. He healed me. There's this crazy story about pigs you're not even going to believe. I don't know what all God is calling you to do, but I do know it's not less than this. Whatever else it is definitely this. Go back home. Go to the place that you live, surrounded by your neighbors. Go to the place that you work, surrounded by those people. I'm not telling you to wear a t-shirt or jump up on a table with a Bible and a bullhorn. I don't think that's very effective. But as you have real relationships with real people who are really interested in you and you're really interested in them, you tell your story. You tell the story of what God has done for you. What God has done for you through the people around you, what God has done for you directly in ways you don't even totally understand yet. What all can we do to change the world? Well, a lot. But it starts with this. You tell people your story. I was here, and now I'm here. I was like this, and now I'm like this. And this over here, this wasn't just my willpower. I had tried that. It hadn't got me anywhere. This wasn't a set of really handy skills I picked up. The only explanation that I have for this is that something beyond me, beyond us, bigger than us, intervened. That may involve him bringing other people into your life. That may involve situations changing from your life. It may involve clearing your eyes so that you could see a lifeline to grab onto. It definitely involves people gathering around you and investing themselves into you for your good when they did not have to. And why would people do that? Well, because they believe in the God most clearly seen in Jesus, because they believe in the way of self-sacrificial love, because they believe in God's future and are trying to live it into right now. Because they can see you for who you can be and don't just see you as bad decisions that you've made. Because they were saved by grace, and now that's the only way that they have to see the world. They were saved through the unmerited favor of God, and so they quit trying to stack up and tally up merit in terms of who we do good for. Because we just believe in the good. So maybe, if you'll allow me to call this a biblical ghost story, maybe the twist on it, maybe I don't know if ghost stories have morals, but no matter how terrifying and chaotic the thing that comes at you is, that Jesus has power and authority over it. Or maybe part of the calling is for you to look back at the storms that you've gone through or at the times that you were haunted and living in the tombs. And remembering the ways that Jesus brought you out. And remember that your calling, we always want, okay, what's the big thing? What's the big program that we can be a part of? Look, there's a place for those. We're constantly, right now, I'm meeting with the elders. We're looking at ways that we can do big things together, and that's good and that's important. But it doesn't take the place of you going into the life that God put you in. The places that God has deployed you as citizens of his kingdom, reflecting who he is and telling your story. Because that little thing is one of the mustard seed kind of things that God uses to change the world, that he uses to grow his kingdom. It's always been the deal, and it hasn't ever changed. See, stories like this in the Bible, as scary as some of the details are, aren't stories of horror, they're stories of hope. And it's because of who you're connected to, and it's because that Jesus himself is involved. So, may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. And the whole church said together, amen.